how did they achieve it in this film? Because obviously it was before green screen. Brilliant.
It is really good.
Shot's not done yet, Tom.
Oh, geez, are we going into the mirror?
Hello and welcome back to Cinema Rules. My name is Shaun.
And my name's Tom.
And today we're on episode 4 of How to Hollywood, where we deep dive into some of our movie's favourite scenes and tell you exactly how they're crafted.
The objective of How to Hollywood is to pick apart the magic of movies, whether that be editing, cinematography, or visual effects.
Or practical effects. Or any effects, really.
Yummy.
So, Shaun, what do you have in store for us today?
So today I have 2 movies, Contact and Sucker Punch.
Okay.
And they both share similarities because they both involve mirrors.
The first section that I have is we're looking at 2015's Legend starring Tom Hardy. And we're going to see what it has in common with an 1898 silent film by Georges Méliès.
Okay.
A famous silent film director.
Okay.
And then we're going to move on, because I've developed an obsession with silent films recently, to a silent film so old, 1903, it's a semi-western, but it's old enough to actually have been produced in the Wild West itself.
Oh, wow.
And it's a film that's credited with being one of the foundations of modern cinema.
Oh, okay.
Let's get into our first clip from 2015's Legend.
The editing, sound editing with them 2 voices together is really good as well. Seamless.
Oh, the tension.
You hit me.
Just him watching in the background like, oh God.
He slaps him.
Oh, the slap sound effects, the punching sound effects.
To be fair, after rewatching it, I know what I'm trying to look for.
Yeah.
And you do see it in some scenes.
Oh, yeah.
But because it's so fast paced.
And because you're engrossed in the story.
It's easy for the audience to forget. Reminds me of Sloth there. Jeez. It's the screaming that gets me. It's hilarious.
So that's that. I was going to pick a few scenes. I was going to pick the fight that they have with the other group in the bar, but I thought I'd do this one. Why have I chosen this scene today, Shaun, for How to Hollywood?
Well, it's definitely because the same actor playing 2 parts and they're interacting with one another.
Yeah, it's this kind of body doubling, and by that I mean the same actor on screen at the same time, and they're working with each other. He's performing against himself, isn't he? Essentially.
Yeah.
So how do they do it, Shaun? How do they get 2 people on screen at the same time and have an effective scene between them as characters?
This is all down to the directing and editing, mostly, the majority of it, I think.
Okay.
And then there's some visual effects, not necessarily, it's mainly editing. You obviously need a stand-in for when Tom Hardy is speaking to Brother. When it's an over-the-shoulder shot, you need a stand-in so that he can say his lines and he can act with him. And then Tom Hardy has to basically record it again.
Yeah.
And he has to do it twice, almost.
So you're perfectly right with the body doubles. That's the main sort of avenue into this effect of having them together at the same time. I'm glad you picked out the over-the-shoulder shots as well in their conversation, because that's a classic way, I think, of building communication and close proximity in a character relationship. So you're buying it automatically before you even remember or realise that they're the same actor at the same time. But he does have to record the same sort of scene, the same lines.
Same conversation.
Again, twice over. They play his audio back to him, so he's able to organically have the conversation where he can butt in with a line here.
Do they replay his audio, or would it just be the stand-in actor saying his lines, and then obviously they edit his lines out?
They filmed the Reggie scenes first.
Okay.
And they did replay his audio, but you do still have occasionally an actor reading out the lines for him there. But one of the things that I love here in the editing is the fight choreography.
Yeah.
Because the way that this fight is designed, they build a distance between the characters when they're throwing the bottles. They cover his face with the jacket. They have one of them holding, I think Reggie's held up high, isn't he?
Yeah.
So because you're making that distance and creating that distance through the fight choreography,
easier to do.
it's easier to seamlessly blend these actors together.
Yeah.
We do have 3 scenes in the film where they are together, full face within the same scene.
And that would be down to the very standard editing trick that we can do, like probably right now. I mean, I have done it before in my little short films that I've made like just on my own. It's the easy cloning technique on an editing where you record a shot where you stand this side, and then you record a separate shot when you stand this side, and then you just mask the 2 clips against each other, and you just mask one side with the other, and therefore you've got 2 shots.
Good, yeah. I mean, that's much easier to do these days with green screen, as they used in this film. It's called split screen editing.
Yeah.
So in this film as well, what they did, not just in this scene but in other scenes, is when they were filming each character, they used a computer within a camera to program the movements of the camera itself.
Yeah, so
that when they had to film the other scenes, the camera was following the same exact panning and the same exact movement.
You're able to incorporate a movement in the camera technique as well as incorporating that effect, which never would have been able to been achieved, or I say that it would have been very difficult, but with the advancement of robotics, it's far easier nowadays.
Exactly. And this got me thinking, Shaun, what was the first film ever to use this technique?
Okay.
And it goes back to 1898.
1898?
With Georges Méliès. And he's famous, you might know him from the short silent film where the rocket gets stuck in the moon.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Whoa. Looks like it's got a bag on his head.
Yeah, very famous artistic director. This is the director as well.
You can see the fact that the film, in an optical printing machine, they have like a track in order to keep both films steady. Whereas in this film, you can see it jolting. You can see the table jolting because both strips of film aren't positioned completely accurately, and obviously because of the time that it was made. It's crazy,
amazing that this is over 120 years old and that they're doing
and
they're doing this
and how
and that as well,
and how experimental they are.
Yeah,
I guess how they're creating the effect of him not having a head is you can actually see it. It kind of looked like a bag over his head, but maybe it's a pen over his head within each frame of the film, or is it a second piece of film like that optical printing where they just mask out the top layer of that film so it covers his head.
So this is the same exact sort of technique with the masking shot. So originally the base shot of this is completely blank with no table, and then the table is there, and then you have the original actor, and then you have multiple shots for each one of the heads as well.
I see.
And then in the editing process, you're superimposing that footage together. But the fact that was done so early on, like you would never guess that a technique that we're looking at in 2015 actually was done pretty well, I would say.
Yeah. It's a really interesting process, and the fact that they had to figure this all out manually, it really shows that we take all of this technology for granted and how easy it is to do now.
There are other ways, more simpler ways to do it, like in the Matrix Revolutions when Neo fights all of the Agent Smiths. They're just computer generated CGI, aren't they?
Yeah.
But I feel like the physical look of these films kind of ages much better, even that one from 1898, because it is that person.
Yeah.
Did you know that 39% of the people watching this video right now aren't subscribed to Cinema Rules?
You know what, Tom? I do know that because it's the same figure every video. Okay, guys, you need to change this figure. So we've got something better to say. There's some positive feedback about.
We want to say
videos.
38%,
38%,
37%. If you like these videos, feel free to drop a little subscribe and click the old notification bell so you don't miss another episode of How to Hollywood. And if you want to drop a suggestion into a film that you would like to pick apart, or a film that you think has a fantastic piece of editing or cinematography or effects, then drop a comment or suggestion down in the comments below.
That's what he said. Brilliant.
It is really good.
It's so weird and uncanny. But how do you think that was achieved? This is a much more complicated procedure, but it's actually quite simple as well.
All right. All right. Okay.
No, we're not.
Oh, geez, are we going into the mirror?
How I've been on my own before. I was working in the kitchen.
Tom's trying to think about this in his brain.
And he pushes me down.
And there we have it.
Okay, that's an interesting one. I was originally going to say that I thought there was no mirror there, and it was so the actors facing us at the very start, the two actors, we're actually seeing them act, and it's just body doubles on this side, because I felt like the movement was slightly off with their characters that were doing the mimicking or mirroring.
Yeah.
And then when we go through, we're actually going onto the side of the actual actors.
Yeah.
But my only question is, how does their reflection then appear on this side? I thought, do they put in the mirrors as the camera's going around? But then, why is there no reflection of the camera? Is that digitally removed in post-production or something like that?
So you've done quite well.
Okay, good.
So
good.
in the start of the scene here,
they're not the same.
They're not the same. So you were right. The actors are facing us. There's no mirror.
Yeah, it's really subtle differences. I only spotted that because I was looking for it.
Exactly. So the mirrors are cut out, and as you can see on the mirrors, they've got stuff hanging up, and what they do is they actually hang it on both sides to mimic a reflection. So you can see the little photographs on the side there.
Yeah.
There's actually one backing onto another.
Yeah,
You've got little items reflecting. You've got that little box, and there's another box on the other side.
And the lights in the background almost mimic the light in the foreground.
There's a flower in the top right hand corner that's also again hanging down from the other side. So yeah, the actors closest to us, the back of their heads aren't the same people as the ones in front. They're just mimicking their movements, and you rightfully said some of their movements are off, but that's only because you're looking at it. You're looking for it. As the camera pans around, she's got really black hair. There's a hidden cut.
Okay.
So the woman's hair is black, so they cut the footage there, and then there's a second shot starting from this point, moving round, and now this is a second shot.
Yeah.
And now they've got mirrors on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my only question...
And then the camera isn't in the mirror because it's angled.
It's really good camera positioning then for that not to be able to be
so
in the mirror itself. So I was half right.
You were half
right until we got to the other side of the mirror.
You just thought that they replaced it with mirrors. It's actually something that they could have done, but they just chose to hide a cut.
This is a technique that we kind of saw partially in our Sam Mendes reaction to 1917, because it's filmed in one take like this, but actually there are so many hidden cuts that allow them to create a kind of seamless shot like this, but also mask the hidden changes.
Yeah, I think the reason why they probably didn't do it the way that you suggested, which was to, as the movement is going and we're out of view of the mirrors and they come in and replace them, I think the only reason why they wouldn't have wanted to do that is because it's a very quiet scene and there's so many things attached to these mirrors. It would be quite clunky.
It'd be too difficult to get the pictures back in the right place and things like that. I'm sure they would have.
They would have pre-made it and then just slide it in. So it's very plausible technique that they could have done it your way, but they just chose to hide it with a cut so that it's a bit more of a controlled scene rather than a hectic. It begs the question: is this complicated shot needed for such a simple scene?
Yeah, but
it begs the question.
But if we always said that in filmmaking, film wouldn't be. Yeah. Film wouldn't have. People wouldn't have experimented, and it would never have changed, would it?
It wouldn't have developed.
It's like if you look at a piece of art, is paint really needed instead of pencil or something like that?
Yeah.
Different medium, but same kind of ideas in terms of changing technique, changing.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. Yeah, it is an art form. And experimentation is always a good thing to progress the quality of a film.
If you want to go and check out the full-length version of this episode of How to Hollywood, head on over to our Patreon channel now, where you can watch an extra 20-30 minutes of us picking apart these scenes and talking about them in more depth.
Link in the description below.
This is made by Edwin S. Porter, who's a very famous silent film director from this era. Right.
Great Train Robbery, 1903, bloody hell.
So, it is what it says. It's a train being robbed.
This isn't a train.
There's the train.
Okay. It's funny because movies back then had to be a stationary shot, so it had to show everything going on in the scene. There's no jump cuts, there's no editing techniques, there's no I say editing techniques to progress or propel the story. It's a stationary static shot.
We'll see if we think that when we've finished.
Yeah, this is why I think back then, when audiences watched these moving pictures, they could relate to it as being in real life, because there's such long static shots. It's
almost like the theatre.
It's either like the theatre, but they're just watching something unfold, rather than there being close-ups and medium shots and establishing shots. I think the cinematic composition and awe of cinema developed over time.
What I like about this is that it's kind of it is a story, isn't it? It's a story like any film, but it's kind of it accelerates as it goes.
Yeah. It's crazy to think this is over 120 years old.
Yeah.
These people have been dead for about 100 years.
That explosion's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what's also crazy to think is that this is now on YouTube and therefore permanently on the internet in our history. It's not going to be one of those films that's lost
forever
to time. This is an amazing shot. This would have been awe-inducing at the time.
Yeah. So is this one of the first films to ever use editing and cuts to propel a story?
You're on the right lines. Because you were saying, weren't you, about those stationary shots earlier on? It is one of the first films. Nobody can say for certain whether it is the first, as I said earlier on. But it is a film that flicks between location shots and on-set produced scenes in order to craft a narrative.
Yeah.
And cutting and editing is really important, but I'll talk about that in a little bit further on. Do you know how they shot the scene in the actual train station when they first robbed and the train comes in, which is really like close to the window? Do you know how they shot those?
I can just imagine that it being like almost a theatre set with a screen, already recorded screen, projected onto the back. Just like, it's very similar to The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, except The Wizard of Oz like perfects it in much like grander scope and grander detail.
Yeah.
But at the time, when you see that come right past the window like that, it
gives it a sense of depth.
Yeah. So these are pre-filmed shots, and you have that one later on when they're on the train and the speed that it's going. Yeah. Like capturing that speed for the film is insane.
Yeah.
So I just want you to think about the cutting between the scenes and see if you can just think about why they're doing it.
I guess it's showing different passages of time simultaneously.
Exactly.
Which is probably a first for cinema and first for audience to witness, that whilst they are celebrating, or whilst this scene is happening simultaneously, something else is happening. It's really showcasing like the passage of time.
I'm so glad you got it, because I thought it would be too subtle. Yeah, because it's such an early and simplistic thing that we just take for granted in storytelling and film, don't we? Yeah. But it's called cross-cut editing or cross-cut sequencing, where you have these events going on at the same time. Yeah. But it's actually amazing for increasing the tension for the audience, because they think, oh, they're celebrating, they're escaping, they don't know.
And it's building actually a grander story, isn't it? Because not only it's not just following these characters, it's also following a third character.
Yeah, or it could be brought in for some antagonists as well as a protagonist. Yeah. And this is why I think it's so foundational. Again, maybe not the first silent film to use that cross-cutting technique, but one of the films that's used, and it's so simple. Yeah. I think
two scenes into
seeing
one.
that, when it cuts back to the guy tied up as well and you see someone find him, people are thinking, oh, they're onto him now, they're going to get him now.
And that is actually a technique called dramatic irony, where the audience knows something that the characters don't.
Yeah.
And there's actually the reverse of that
Yeah.
as well, where the characters know something that the audience...
That's been done for hundreds of years prior to this in kind of tragedy and theatre as well, but this is the first time that you see it on screen. And managed to... One of the most iconic shots of cinema.
Yeah.
Not the first fourth wall break, but the pointing of the gun to the camera has been homaged in hundreds of films. The ending of Goodfellas.
Okay.
James Bond.
Yeah.
Tarantino films like Reservoir Dogs, Django Unchained.
Yeah. I guess it's also featured in the intro credits to some of the like the Fistful of Dollars and with the figures and them shooting at the screen. I guess Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, all these old directors, they say if you're a new filmmaker coming up, don't look at their work as inspiration. Look at the work that inspired their work. Because their work is just an amalgamation of inspirational shots that came from someone previous to them.
This has been a really good episode. Has it been your favourite so far?
I think so, I think so. In terms of the history of cinema, I feel like it's educated me quite a lot, which is the reason why we wanted to do these videos. Is we wanted to educate ourselves about cinema, about film. It's why we started the channel with our reactions, but now we're here to dive deep and to really get into the nitty-gritty of things.
Exactly. Let us know, guys, if there are any short silent films that you personally enjoy or think are kind of masterclasses in the evolution and beginnings of cinema,
and we'll look to cover those. But comment down below all your suggestions of silent films, of film techniques, of special effects that you want us to cover. Don't forget, the uncut version is on Patreon right now. It's about 10 to 20 minutes longer than the YouTube version, and they're released a week early before they're released on YouTube, so go check that out. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell to be reminded of when we're episode 5 comes out.
I've got my one lined up already.
Yeah, so do I. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.